Hey, good afternoon. How's everybody?
Good afternoon, Professor.
Hi,
I
good evening, Professor.
Good evening. Good
Good
evening,
evening.
Devin. Good evening, Ebony. Um, well, I see like 12 people. Okay. Hi, Anna. Anna's here. Or
Hello, Professor.
how are you, Anna? So I see 12 people, but somehow, yeah, still people are joining. So I see total of 16, but 14 already. Don't forget to sign into the discussion board, right? Forum, right? I see some only 12 people here. So some of you are not signed in to the today's forum. So please don't forget to do that. Now, so let's um, let's pick up from where we left off last time. So I remember we did, all we were doing the ratio analysis, and of course, uh, five categories of ratios, right? Profitability, profitability category. We talked about uh, at least three or four, I believe. We did, return on assets, return on equity, return on sale, right? And oh, we also did, return on capital, right? And return on capital, right? Um, Second category is liquidity, right? Liquidity, liquidity. Let's see. That's not do it. And in liquidity, we did, a current ratio and the quick ratio. We still need to do average collection period, right? Or it's also called average days in collection, average days in collection, same thing. So we're gonna come back to this later, right? We'll come back to this later, and then uh, uh, we were talking about inventory, asset management category, right? So asset management ratios, that's management. Uh, so inventory valuation. So let me bring it down. Inventory turnover, inventory turnover ratio, and fixed assets turnover ratio. Turnover. Uh, that looks. Let me do it this way. We all know FA would mean fixed assets, right? Fixed assets turnover ratio. And um, I was explaining that in inventory turnover ratio, there are uh, retail method and manufacturing's method, right? Basically, it breaks down into uh, retail and manufacturing. it's basically the same formula, but in retail, we use revenue, right? Whereas in manufacturing, we use CGS, okay? And it all makes sense, So basically, in retail, it's revenue over average inventory. And in manufacturing, it's CGS over average inventory. So then there are two questions. First one, what is turnover? What's turnover? I mean, this is something that comes up very often in, if you're in sales, or marketing, or I mean, even if you're just a small business owner, you would understand what turnover ratio is. What's turnover? Another thing is, what is average inventory? Let me, what does average inventory mean? Average inventory means basically, beginning inventory plus ending inventory divided by 2. Okay. Now, so then the next question is, what is turnover? Well, turnover means, literally complete, replacement, complete replacement, right? So it's hard to find a synonym, but I can give you graphical representation of that. Graphical representation. So suppose you are running a retail business, some kind of retail business, right? If you're running a retail business, you will know basically you start the month. There is always beginning inventory, right? You start the month with the beginning inventory. So I have to put a timeline. So time 0, time 1. So suppose this is a quarter, because rather than a month, let's assume this is a quarter, right? Because 1 quarter is a basic operating cycle. And you begin the month with about, let's say $20,000 worth of inventory. So inventory is basically, merchandise, right? Your goods to sell, right? But suppose on average, during a quarter, right, on average, you sell your revenue is, first of all, your revenue is, let's say, on average, right? Let's say your average quarterly sale or revenue, right? Average quarterly sale is, let's say, 100K. Okay, $100,000. So obviously, that means if you start the quarter with 20K worth of inventory, then obviously you're short, right? Because the average sale is 100,000. By the way, this 20K beginning inventory is actually the ending inventory of the last month, last quarter, isn't that right? This 20K, it came from somewhere. Where did it come from? It was actually left over from the last quarter. It was left over, right? That means it was the ending inventory of the last quarter, and then that will be the beginning inventory of this quarter, right? So let's see if I can move this. It really bothers me. What's going on? Okay, so okay, I can't move. I can't move that. What's going on? I was able to move that. Oh, no, I can't move. This is weird. Okay, I hate this, but I'll have to. Okay, average and then now average quarter. The average because average quarterly revenue is 100,000, right? You will need to have at least $100,000 worth of $100,000 worth of merchandise or inventory ready. So at the beginning of the quarter, you will order, right? You will place an order for the gap, right? Which is 80K. So then you will have 100K ready, right? You'll have 100K. So difficult to work with this. You'll have 100K ready, right? Think about it. If this is beginning inventory, right? This is beginning inventory. This is beginning inventory, right? And then what is this? What is that 80K? Anyone? 20K is the beginning inventory. So you placed order for 80K, right? To be ready to meet the average quarterly sale of 100K. So when you placed the when you ordered this 80K to fill that gap, what is that 80K called? Anyone? You should know this already. How come nobody knows?
Is it profit?
No, how can it be profit? You haven't sold it even. I mean, you have, this is just the inventory. How can it be profit? I mean, you just say profit too easily. Come on, guys, you just did the first. Huh? Say that again?
The ending inventory.
No. Ending, how can ending inventory be, I mean, we are at time 0, right? We are at time 0. You don't have ending inventory until you arrive here. Right?
Beginning inventory.
Yeah, that's beginning. I'm not asking about the beginning inventory. I'm asking you, what is that 80K? What's that 80K called? No one thinks. Huh? No one thinks. Thinking is absent completely.
It's
Look.
left over. We don't know what.
No. What is left over? 80K is left over?
80K is left over because you're saying 20 is the beginning inventory. 80 is left over from the 100K. So
Professor
No.
Clay.
80K is not left over. It was. If you cannot have leftover before you eat the food.
Professor, is that the working capital?
No. We have, first of all, when we are talking about inventory, it has nothing to do with the balance sheet. I mean, of course, it has something to do with the balance sheet because there's inventory in the balance sheet. But
Is it possible you can reword the question?
My question is, look, this is the beginning inventory, right? Because you start the quarter has just started. That's time 0. Time 1, that's the end of the quarter. You started the quarter with 20K. You had 20K because it was already there. And I told you that beginning inventory came from the previous quarter. So that beginning inventory is actually the ending inventory of the last quarter. Isn't that right? You start with what was left over from the last quarter.
That's correct.
Right? This is what is left over. This 20K is what's left over, not 80K. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So this 20K, but then what was the average quarterly revenue? What's the average quarterly sale? I wish I can get rid of this, but then I can. What is the average quarterly sale?
is it the 80K? Is the average quarterly sale?
No, what are you looking at this? I already wrote here what average quarterly sale is.
The
And if I wrote it, you can't, huh? What did you say?
The 100K.
Yes, the 100K is the average quarterly sale. So isn't it? I mean, if you're looking at this, how can you not see it? I already wrote average quarterly sale, average quarterly revenue is equal to 100K. So then if that is average quarterly sale, then this beginning inventory alone is not enough. Because you can expect on average you're gonna sell $100,000 this month. I mean this quarter. So what do you need to do? Don't you need to get 100K ready? Don't you think?
Yes.
Yes, of course. You need to get 100K worth of inventory ready, right? So if you need to get 100K ready, so what do? This gap of 80K, you'll have to place order for that 80K, that gap. Isn't that right?
Yes.
When that order arrives to your store, then together with 20K, that makes 100K. So you are ready now. You are ready to meet the demand. You are ready to meet the demand for this quarter. Isn't that right? But then what is the name? If this is beginning inventory, 20K is beginning inventory, but what is the name for 80K then? What's the name for that? Have you forgotten that already? It's just, I'm so disappointed. You forgot that already. You forgot that already. Huh? Look at the CGS. There's beginning inventory, and then what? The terminology is not.
Purchase.
Yes, that's the net purchase. Net purchase. This is. Where is my pen? There's no way I can move this to the side. This is called net purchase. Isn't that right? And together, beginning inventory and net purchase together, that's called what? If you add beginning inventory to net purchase, that's called what? What is that called? What should it be called? That inventory means, when you have this, $100K, $100,000 worth of inventory, that's basically what? That's the merchandise, isn't it right? That's the merchandise you have. That's the merchandise you have ready to do what?
To sell.
Exactly. So what is it? What's the name for that? What is the acronym for that?
Cost of goods sold?
No. You haven't sold yet. You just have this $100,000 worth of inventory ready at time zero. What at time zero? Where is sale? I mean, at time zero, can there be sale at time zero? Right at the beginning of the quarter, you only have your inventory ready, and that is the merchandise you have ready to sell. So what should it be called?
The only other one I see is the returns and allowances.
No, returns and allowances. I mean,
So then
what
which
returns and
one on the
allowances?
list is it?
Huh?
So then which one on the list is it? Because it's beginning inventory, purchase, and then return and allowances.
Use your logic.
Goods ready for sale.
Someone said what?
Goods ready
I
for
heard someone. Yes. Yes, who said that?
Awa.
Yeah.
Awa.
Awa, say that again.
Goods
Say that
ready
again.
for sale.
Goods ready for sale? No, actually, it's goods available for sale. Remember, goods available for sale, GAS. Goods available for sale. Okay, so Awa, you're getting 0.5. Okay, isn't that logically? Isn't that what it is, right? You have $100,000 worth of goods ready to sell, and that's what you have. That's the inventory you have. You're beginning. It's like you're fighting. It's like the battle begins at time zero. You got to be ready for the battle. To be ready for the battle, what do you have to have? You have inventory of ammo. In other words, you must have the inventory of guns, rifles, tanks, fighter planes, fighter pilot, and fighter jets, bombers, rocket launchers. These are the inventory. I mean, you cannot start the battle with the beginning inventory. You understand? If you start if that's only what's left over from the previous battle, then you are lacking. I mean, you will be facing the enemies who can be overpowered, who's coming at you with 1,000 tanks, right? Then you should be ready with 1,000 anti-tank missiles, or at least 1,000 tanks. But if you have only 200 tanks, right? That's just the beginning inventory. You cannot cope. You cannot fight the battle. You cannot meet your enemies, right? You cannot fight your enemies. You have to have matching number of or matching level of inventory of weapons, right, to meet them. I mean, consider that the enemy is the okay. This is not a very good matching analogy, but think about it. If average sale is per quarter is 100K, then that means there are buyers, consumers, right? Consumers, coming to buy during this quarter on average. I mean, spending, consumers will be coming with 100K to spend. And you should have goods ready, right? So that's GAS, goods available for sale, right? Of course, it may not be 100K because it's just the average. This month, this quarter, it may be more or it may be less. But at least we should have 100K worth of inventory ready, right? So ordinarily, if this month is just regular, if this quarter turns out to be a regular quarter, just ordinary quarter, by the end of the quarter, your inventory level will draw down to something like this. And let's say this is 15K or 10K. Isn't that right? Your inventory will decline. Your inventory will, because it will deplete. It will be depleted because as you sell, your inventory will be depleted. Isn't that right? Your inventory will be depleted. So by the end of the quarter, you'll be left with something like 10K, or you may even be left with nothing, 0K. If you are left with 0K, you sold everything. If you're left with 10K, that's your ending inventory, and which will be the beginning inventory of the next quarter. Isn't that right? Does that make sense?
It does.
Only one person. Only one person is. Two people are following. What about the rest of the class? Doesn't it make sense? That's how the inventory level is depleted, right? But if it is just a regular quarter, and if the business is just as usual, nothing out of the ordinary, just regular quarter. But what if this quarter business was extremely good? What if this quarter business was extremely good? So you sold everything, right? You sold everything here at the end of the first month. Now, what would you do? When you sold everything at the end of the first month, will you just say, good business. We had a good month. That's it. We're not going to do anything, until the end of the quarter. Is that what you're going to do?
No, you're gonna buy more.
Exactly. You're going to replenish, right? You're going to in other words, if the inventory falls to zero, then you're going to replenish the inventory. In other words, you're going to place order again. In other words, there will be a whole net purchase of 100K, right? And it was such a great month. Then you sold out again, all that 100,000, right? What do you do again? You replenish your inventory. You call your vendors and order again. So then again, okay. So by the end of the month, by the end of the quarter, let's say you're left with just 5K. That's your ending inventory. But this example shows you that your inventory turned over 3 times. Does that make sense? This is inventory turnover ratio. Your inventory turned over 3 times, right? So basically, you never knew this quarter it will be like your sale will be this good, and then your inventory will turn over 3 times. You never knew. Had you already known, then at the beginning, the GAS will be 3 times the average quarterly sale level. Does that make sense? My throat. Yeah. So that's why, and then it makes sense why. Okay, here, let me. So you see why they do, inventory turnover ratio, right? Revenue divided by average inventory, right? Because if inventory turned over 3 times, the revenue would be 3 times the quarterly average quarterly average, right? The revenue will be, revenue is, basically, the result of how many times your inventory turned over, right? Especially in retail, it's exactly that way. In manufacturing, they measure it by CGS, right? You have to because in manufacturing also inventory is valued at cost, right? I've been telling you, in manufacturing, inventory is valued at cost. In retail, inventory can be valued as selling price. But for tax reporting purpose, I told you, for tax purpose, even in retail, you have to express inventory in cost. And then think about it. The inventory turnover ratio, the higher it is, obviously, the better it is. The higher it is, that means, the greater the that means your business is doing well, the higher it is, right? And also, you must have a benchmark. I mean, your inventory turnover ratio is 3. Is that high? You'll have to compare it with the industry average. If the industry average is 6, then that's not good. I mean, if industry average. On average, if you're in your industry, inventory turnover is right. Especially if it is, think about it. Food, restaurant industry, right? Dining, right? Food and dining, restaurant. You can't have too much inventory at the, to begin with, because it's all food items, like meat, vegetables, if you have too much of them, it will spoil, right? And you have to have just right amount of inventory, right? Of course, there's an optimal inventory. There is a way to calculate optimal inventory level. When we have time, we can talk about that, but not here, not this time. So you don't want the spoilage, So in the restaurant industry, you carry just the right amount of inventory, and then when the business is good, you have to do this. You'll have to place order again and order. You place order again, you order again, you replenish your inventory. If the inventory turnover, you can tell if you go to a diner or to a restaurant. If there are a lot of customers, that their business is booming, their inventory turnover ratio is high, and then you can be sure they use fresh ingredients. Isn't that right? That makes sense. A restaurant with high, you also have customer turnover. What is the customer turnover ratio? If you have a lot of customers coming into your business, right? Suppose you have, let's say you have a restaurant, and in your diner or whatever, in your restaurant, you have only 4 tables. You have only 4 tables. Of course, in 4 tables, let's say 4 people can sit. 4 people, right? Now think about it. During the lunch hour will be probably from 11 to 3. That's 4 hours, right? During these 4 hours, would you want these customers, the same customers, occupying the same table for 4 hours? Huh? Just tell me. Just out of your common sense, would you like the same group, right? Group A, Group B, right? Group C, same group of 4 people, Group D, taking up those tables, for 4 hours. Would you like that?
No.
No, of course not. If possible, you want every table to be filled with 4 people at least, because if just one person takes up the table, and unless one person orders food for 4 people, right? If one person orders food for 4 people, then that's fine. But if one customer orders just his or her meal only, but takes up the entire table for 4 hours, you would like to kill that customer, don't you think? Right? But the thing is, look, but if they come by groups of 4 and sit at the table and eat within 30 minutes and leave in 30 minutes, if ideally, if everyone comes, all 4 groups come, they all come in groups of 4, and then finishes their meal within 30 minutes and leaves, and then the next group comes during 4 hours, what's going to be the customer turnover ratio? My head is aching, there's no, it's useless to shout, because it doesn't make you smarter, or it doesn't make you understand better, or
What hours do I do, like 30 minutes? For each class.
if you have a question, please, ask it clearly. So let me explain again. Lunch hour is for 11 to 3. That's 4 hours, right? And the customers come in groups of 4, right? Hypothetically, customers come in groups of 4, and they arrived. 4 tables were all filled at 11, and then they finish the meal and leave in 30 minutes, right? The next group comes in also. Next groups all also in groups of 4. They all fill the table. I mean, if it happens like this during these 4 hours, what's going to be the customer turnover ratio?
Is it 8?
8, yes. Who said that? Who said that?
Ajibola.
Ajibola. Okay. Ajibola. Yeah. This is not even a difficult thing. Ajibola, you got 0.5. Or I'll give you 1 actually. This shows thinking, ability to think. Some people, if you're asking me, where do I look? Where do I look? No, you're not thinking. If you're asking me, where do I look? You're not thinking. You're not using your brain. You're just trying to, you're just trying to answer the question without understanding or thinking anything. But to a question, this is not a difficult question, but at least, one person showed that he could think. So this is customer turnover ratio. And you can tell if the business runs like this, the ingredients will be very fresh. Isn't it right? You're not going to have, after eating from this restaurant, you're not going to have any problem, stomach, you're not going to have any indigestion problem or, stomach problem, right? Stomach flu or anything. Why? It's very unlikely that their ingredients of raw materials, the food, right? Agricultural produce, right? The produce and meat and things like that will be stale. It's very unlikely. Why? Because of high customer turnover ratio, their turnover ratio of their ingredients, their raw material turnover ratio is also high. Make sense? So everything will be fresh, right? And the business that's slow, I mean, if the restaurant is very slow, there's a good chance that the ingredients won't be fresh, right? Doesn't that make sense? Because they are business is slow, and the ingredients that they have bought have been in the refrigerator for a long time, right? Chances are that their food is not very good or not fresh. Okay, doesn't that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's what the inventory turnover ratio is. The only difference between manufacturing and the retail is that in manufacturing they. So again, the higher this number, that means their inventory is well used, right? This is obviously a positive sign, right? Again, then fixed assets turnover ratio. Then think about it. Fixed assets turnover ratio. The fixed assets turnover ratio is the same, similar, revenue over fixed assets. Now, both of them, think about it. They are both input-output ratios. I've been telling you, since we started on this, I've been telling you all these ratios are basically input to output ratio, output to input ratio, right? Output to input ratio. So inventory turnover ratio is, in a way, if you are a manufacturer, it's clearly output to input ratio, right? It's clearly output to input ratio, right? Because if you're a manufacturer, your inventory is raw material, right? Raw material is clearly your inventory. Raw material is input, right? And the output is the finished products that are sold. Finished products that are sold. Finished goods that are sold in dollars is called CGS. If it is expressed in dollar amount, it's called CGS. In retail, of course, for them, inventory is their input, and they sell it, right? That's the output. Revenue is the output. But then you might wonder, revenue is output, that's for sure. Is fixed assets input? Well, no, fixed assets is not the raw material, but it is input in the sense that fixed assets are used to produce the output, right? Fixed assets are not the raw material, but they are input. Fixed assets are input in the sense that they are being used to produce the output. Fixed assets are physical capital. Isn't that right? That's physical capital. Physical capital, right? And the output is the revenue. So, like the return on assets, right? Consider that as return on assets. But return on assets, of course, that a numerator is the profit, not revenue. Here, it's revenue. And think of it this way. If this ratio is high, of course, we want this ratio to be high. We want this number to be high. And for this number to be high, if this number is high, that means fixed assets are being utilized well. Fixed assets are used very well. Fixed assets, because it's generating a lot of revenue. Okay, if revenue is small, fixed assets are not serving its purpose. So think of it this way. Suppose you are a lawyer. If you are a lawyer, what would be your fixed assets? Legal service is a service industry. If you're a lawyer, it's a service industry. Obviously, it's not manufacturing. You're not going to have that many fixed assets, that much fixed asset, right? Isn't that right? But the only then think about it. For a lawyer, what would be the fixed assets? Can anyone tell me what would be the fixed assets for a lawyer?
Client.
Paper.
Client is a fixed asset. Can you use a client? Client is. Okay, someone said what? Someone said what?
No,
What? Huh?
I
Paper?
Paper. Yeah.
No, paper is. Look, paper is not an asset.
The
Paper
money
is
you get from the client.
The degree?
What?
The degree. The law degree.
Oh yeah. But it's not fixed asset. Think about it. Fixed asset means physical capital. What's capital? Capital is means of production.
The money you get from the
Their law
client.
office?
Oh yeah. Their law office. But
Okay.
just the office.
Oh, no.
Paper is just a look. Paper is expendable. Paper is something like do you call toilet paper an asset? Huh? Or
No.
it's just look, expendable. Those are expendables, right? In other words, what else? How else? Yeah, physical capital, right? Law degree is an asset, but it is not. It's intangible. I'm talking about physical capital, right? Fixed asset means, think, please. It's fixed assets turnover ratio, and fixed assets Law degree cannot be fixed assets. Fixed assets are real assets or physical assets, physical capital. For a lawyer, what would be the physical capital? It would be something like computer, right? He needs computer, right? File cabinet.
Or printers, stuff like that.
Printer, yeah. Copier and printer, things like that. Printer, copier. These are his fixed assets. Now suppose, and what's their purpose? What is their purpose? Their purpose is to be used to get him more business. Isn't that right?
Yes.
In other words, if he gets, these fixed assets all contribute. They contribute, right? They contribute to his success. Lawyers in a good business, right? In other words, if he gets a lot of clients, right? Of course, file cabinets will not get him clients, but for whatever he does, I mean, he will have to market himself well. He will have to advertise himself well, right? But then he gets clients, and if he gets a lot of clients for whatever reason, good marketing, or he wins the case. I mean, he has a successful record of winning the cases. I mean, his winning ratio is very high. Then he will get a lot of clients. When he gets a lot of clients, his computer will work hard. Isn't that right? If he gets a lot of clients, his computer will work hard, right? And his file cabinet will work hard too. His printers will work hard. His copier will work hard. Isn't that right? But when these assets work hard, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to these assets when they work hard?
Wear and tear.
Right. Right. Wear and tear. Yeah, you're right. Who said depreciate? Who said
Elizabeth.
wear and tear? Elizabeth, you said what?
Depreciate.
Depreciate. Okay. You'll get 0.5. And who said wear and tear?
Antonia.
Who? I didn't hear
I'm in
you.
the train station. Antonia.
Antonia.
Okay, I'll have to. Please raise your hand. Who said wear and tear? Raise your hand. Antonia.
Sorry. Yes,
Right?
Antonia.
Yeah, he's in a train.
Okay, Antonia, you're getting 0.5 as well. Yeah, think about it. They don't depreciate for nothing. They depreciate because they wear and tear, right? And because they wear and tear, they will more likely to break down. Then, compare this with another lawyer. Another lawyer gets very, little business. I mean, he doesn't get very much business. He gets very little business, and he's that business that has very slow. The lawyer that has very slow business. His computer won't break down. His file cabinet won't break down. His printer won't break down. His copier won't break down. But this lawyer who has a lot of business, his fixed assets are more likely to break down. Right? Makes sense? If they break down, what will he do? What is the lawyer going to do if they break down?
He replaced them.
He's going to replace them. Right? So in other words, turnover, if he replaces this, his fixed assets will turn over. Right? Makes sense? So in other words, if his business is thriving, if his business is booming, of course, they won't break down that easily. But if his business is booming, then they are more likely to break down, and then he will replace them. But breaking down Wear and tear of these equipment means they're working hard, right? They are working hard and they are making contribution to his revenue. Make sense? Does that make sense?
Yes.
If they don't break down, they are not making any contribution to his revenue. But if they break down, that means he's getting a lot of revenue. His revenue is very, going to go up a lot, right? Obviously, his physical capital, physical assets are making contribution to his revenue, right? One way or the other. So if they work hard and if they break down, they will be. So again, so this is the ratio that measures the productivity or productivity of the fixed assets and productivity of the inventory. Now think about it. Inventory is what? Inventory is current asset. Inventory is current asset, right? Whereas fixed assets are non-current assets. So these two ratios represent the productivity, right? Productivity of current assets and non-current assets, right? Makes sense. And the third one is actually, I put it right under liquidity, but it is, it can be considered liquidity, but also, it can be considered, asset management ratio, because think about it. What is, average collection period? It's also called average days in collection. So it has something to do with accounts receivable, right? So what is average? Average collection period, accounts receivable over average daily sales. Okay, so average daily sale, of course, that means sales revenue divided by 360, right? But everyone knows, okay. Okay. I'm getting lightheaded because of all these, shouting. I'm tired. My head is, spinning. If you guys are, very, very responsive, quickly, responding, I won't have to raise my. Accounts receivable, average daily sale means average daily revenue. So that's revenue divided by 360. Okay, but we know it can be rewritten, right, as, because think about it, dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So reciprocal is, so the reciprocal is then, right, 360 over revenue, right? Now, also think about it. Out of the revenue, how much is the accounts receivable, right? Because revenue isn't always cash, especially in B2B. A lot of times, revenue is, I've been telling you, promissory note or invoices. Promissory note, right? Or accounts receivable, right? Makes sense. A lot of, in B2B. So it's very important how quickly you collect your accounts receivable, right? How quickly you collect your accounts receivable. So in this case, I've been telling you, no seller wants to be stuck with promissory notes or accounts receivable for a long time. Generally they all want to collect within 45 days max, right? Or otherwise they just factor it. We talked about factoring, right? They just factor it even on day one. So the lower this number, obviously the lower this number, right? The better it is. The higher this number, not good. That means you have a lot of uncollected accounts receivable, right? Does that make sense? So here, the lower the number, the better it is, right? And then, so that's asset management ratios, right? Now in debt management ratio, right? I can only introduce, I guess, okay. So I did accounts. Average collection period down here, right? No. Okay. Now, next, debt management ratio, right? One, two, three, four. Debt management category. And here in the debt management category, we have times interest earned and debt to debt ratio. Debt ratio is basically a debt to total assets ratio. Debt ratio, and debt to equity ratio, right? Times interest earned. This is times as in how many times. So it's a multiplier, right? It's not X. It's also times. So that means how many times the interest, how many times the interest payment, right? How many times the interest payment have you earned? So this means EBIT, right? Have you earned? So it's the ratio of EBIT over interest, right? Makes sense. And this is a very critical ratio because if this ratio is not even one, I mean, it should be better. It should be much bigger than, but think about it. Interest comes out of EBIT, isn't it right? Interest comes from EBIT, right? It's paid out of EBIT. So EBIT must be multiple times. EBIT must be multiple times the interest payment. Isn't that right? If EBIT is not even, if EBIT is equal to interest payment, then after paying out interest, you have no EBT. You have zero EBT. Nobody wants that, right? Nobody wants that. So if this ratio is 10, what does that mean? If this ratio is 10, right? your EBIT is 10 times the interest. Your earnings is 10 times the interest. This is something you want, actually. Think about it. This is something you would like. Isn't it right? Um, but again, whether this is good enough or not, you have to you need to compare it with the industry average. Is it greater than or less than the industry average? Okay. It's also called coverage ratio. Coverage ratio. Coverage meaning, you know, covering the interest. Can you cover the interest? Can your earnings cover the interest? It's also debts okay, coverage ratio. Okay, I'm gonna come back, and then the next thing is debt ratio. But we already understand what debt ratio is. It's the capital structure. I mean, we already know if the capital structure is 70% equity, 30% debt, right? That's capital structure. That means, you know, debt to total assets ratio is 0.3 or 30%. And that's also called the leverage ratio. Leverage ratio. Okay. Leverage means, you know, use of debt. Using debt is called leverage. Now, coverage ratio is also called sometimes debt services ratio. Debt service. I mean, paying interest is, you know, basically, you know, servicing debt. So coverage is also called, you know, debt service ratio. Debt services. You know, it's like, I don't know why they use plural, if there is any particular reason for plural, but, you know, called debt services ratio also. Ratio, debt services ratio. So I think that's all the time we have for today. So we're going to be okay. Debt to equity ratio. I'm going to come back to debt to equity ratio next time. For now, I can just say that when you do debt to equity ratio, and I believe I already mentioned this, it's only the long-term capital that is, you know, it's debt to equity, literally. But what is debt? That is only, you know, long-term debt. So no current asset is used here. No current liability is part of this. It's only long-term debt. Long-term debt, right? Debt to equity ratio. So the debt to equity ratio cannot be the same thing as total debt to equity ratio. It cannot be. I mean, if the debt to total assets ratio is 3.3, then equity ratio is 0.7, right? Isn't that obvious? If this is 3, right? If this is 30%, right? Then obviously equity must be 70%. But then, oh, so debt to equity ratio must be, you know, 3/7. You cannot do that. No, you can. Why? No, because this is you know, both long-term and short-term. But here it's only long-term debt. So it cannot be, you know, this, right? All right. So that's all the time we have. Any questions so far? Any questions? Okay, I will take it as no. I'll take it as no. So I will see you guys on Monday. So have a great evening, everyone.
Professor, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Professor.
All right.
Professor.
Take care, everyone. I'll stop sharing and stop recording.